Georgia checks in at number 4 in the college football playoff. But we've got a long way to go. Dean Legge, Dylan Webber, Dylan, this thing is not even close to being settled at all. Needless to say, Georgia's got a huge game with Auburn this week where they still this line will not move, where they are a 3-point favorite.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. People always there's no point. I guess there is a point in talking about the college football rankings, but it just doesn't mean much right now with so much still ahead of them. I guess for LSU it means something because they have kind of, at least secured a spot in the SEC championship and maybe even a spot in the playoffs. But for a team like Georgia with a game like Auburn coming up, the ranking at 4 does not matter right now.
It does not. I will say. I think that this is very simple for LSU. If you get to Atlanta, you're going to the playoff. The question is, where will you play? And sort of what color jersey will you have on? LSU would always prefer to be in white, but they have not won the West yet. Believe it or not, they still have 3 games to go, if I'm not mistaken. So LSU is all but there, but they're not there yet. They still have to deal with Mississippi, Arkansas, which is, and then A&M. Really only one of those 3 games they seem like they're even in halfway difficulty, which would be the A&M game, but I can't see them losing that one either. I mean, they're a 3-touchdown favorite on the road against the Rebels. For Georgia, on the other hand, you're sitting there looking at their situation, and on Tuesday night, I mean, you said you didn't really want to talk about it, but that's the point, though, here is that all of the things that could be happening moving forward. I mean, if Georgia wins out, they're going to be not worse than the 3 seed, I would think, and that would involve a win over LSU, which is, not an impossible thing. That line's at 4.5 right now. But they got to get past Auburn. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing here. You get past Auburn, then you're essentially saying, hey, let's hold serve at home against A&M. Georgia Tech's a joke, and then you got to do what you got to do against LSU. How do they get around Auburn? I mean, what have you learned this week from Kirby now that these practices have been closed again and again and again? It's going to be closed again today on Wednesday. What have you learned about Georgia's situation going in this Auburn game?
Well, it was kind of what we talked about yesterday. Is the biggest thing is slowing down the Auburn offense and making them one-dimensional. You got to stop the run. You cannot let them run the ball.
Yeah.
Because if you get that, then it opens up play action, and then it just opens up the back of the defense. And Bo Nix isn't phenomenal, but if you are having to question whether they're going to run or throw the ball, then it just gives him more time and more options. And that any quarterback with that can make at least some damage. And someone who has talent, Bo Nix has talent. It's just not has not come to fruition yet as a freshman. But they need to make him. They need to get him in 3rd and long. Essentially, is what Kirby was preaching.
Oh, 3rd and I mean, I think to me, you've got a situation here where it would surprise me if Auburn's offense controls the day against a defense that is arguably the best in the country in Georgia. How long do you think it will take to tell in this game if Georgia's going to be able to function at Auburn against their defense? And this Auburn defense is very good. It's the 2nd best in the league.
I don't know. I guess it's hard to say just because we've seen some kind of late blooming performances from Georgia's offense where they're kind of stagnant in the first quarter, first half, and then things start to open up. Because that is what this Georgia offense is kind of predicated on, is just wearing defenses down, even if it's not putting points up on the board necessarily, but to get to that 3rd quarter to where the defense is just struggling to keep up. And so, it could be until the 3rd quarter until we see this Georgia offense actually start to put up points on the board. And not to say that they won't in the first half, but to actually consistently get 10, 15, 20 points.
Well, the thing about it is I'm just kind of looking at the situation, having watched Auburn play a fair amount, but not maybe as much as I've watched the Gators. They're not, those 2 teams are not so far off from one another. I mean, Auburn's allowed 114 points in conference play, the Gators at 130. Gators have played one more game in the conference than Auburn, so that's going to kind of settle that down a little bit. And then obviously Florida with quite a few more points than the Gators. generally speaking, 226 to 188. Um, this game being at Auburn is something Kirby has talked about a lot. And, Auburn has not lost at home this year. When you look at their situation, they're 4-0 at home. Now, like everyone in this league, some of the games at home have not been unbelievable. They played Tulane, Kent State, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss. So those are with the exception of Arkansas, those are the four easiest teams they've played. On the road, away from Jordan-Hare, they played Auburn, a team they beat, which that win looks great right now. They went on the road and won at A&M, which was a solid win. They lost to the Gators in Gainesville. They beat Arkansas's brains in, which I think Tucker High School could do. And then they lost by 3 to LSU. I think that game was a tight game, generally speaking. LSU seemed like they were in control the bulk of the second half. I mean, the game was tied at the half, and then LSU got out to a 23-13 win. Auburn scored with 2 minutes to go. But this team, Georgia, is going to have to run themselves against an Auburn defense that is supposed to be pretty good against the run.
Yeah, I mean, Kirby talked about Derek Brown a lot. I mean,
Derek Brown is really good.
Yeah, and someone asked about him yesterday, and Kirby got a little defensive, saying, "Oh, well, we've played a lot of talented interior defensive linemen and defensive linemen in general, but it is not like Derek Brown. No one Georgia has played against right now, I think, I want to say is in the same echelon maybe as Derek Brown."
Are you asking me that?
I mean, do you think they have played anyone in the same tier as Derek Brown?
Probably not this year necessarily, but they played Derek Brown 3 times already, or 4 times, and with the exception of once. I mean, I don't think Derek really had a big say in that first year, but they ran all over Auburn last year in I was about to say in Atlanta, but in Athens. So they. And in the championship game, they had a lot of success against that Auburn defense as well in 2017. So they've played Derek Brown. One thing that Kirby said today when I think it was Murray Poole asked him about dealing with Derek Brown, he said, "Hey, listen, someone's going to have to deal with him one-on-one." And Kirby was like, "Yeah, that's right." And I think the point is that I would assume that would be Solomon Kinley and crew. But if this Georgia offensive line is as good as people say, then even as good as Derek is, and he is, I mean, I'm telling you, he was a very, very, very good high school player, and him coming back to Auburn this last year surprised me. But he is a very good player for them. But if Georgia's offensive line is as good as everybody says, then they should be able to handle him to some degree. Not like he won't make plays, but I'm telling you, man, defensive linemen get tired over time, and Derek Brown is not Superman. You need to do what you have to do to win the game. They had 303 yards against Auburn last year, rushing. Georgia, they had 516 yards total offense, 303. Now they're going to be on the road, so they're not going to be productive like that, and they didn't have the same receivers. I get that. But, I mean, Auburn only managed 274 yards against Georgia last year, man.
Well, once again, it comes down to that third quarter. Derek Brown will probably make a lot of first half plays.
Yes.
But especially along the defensive line, like you said, he will get tired out.
They have to, man. I mean, guys, listen, it's guys that weigh what I weigh and more, 250 pounds and more, we can't go out there for, it's not really 3 hours, but you're asking a guy to have an explosive play consistently about every 40 seconds. It's hard to do. It's hard to do. When you had Clemson last year and their defensive front, they could rotate guys in there. Hey, I had no problem. You've seen the same thing this year with Georgia. They don't have the skill of the Clemson team last year. There's not 3 first-round draft picks in this front 7 that I'm aware of. But they do roll a lot of guys in and out of there. That's what's going to save them in this game, I think.
Georgia's defensive line in that
Yeah, I
sense?
mean, just that front seven with Tay Crowder, hair on fire, and all that stuff. It's a game to me that it's not quite a coin flip. I mean, like Georgia should win the game, but Georgia should control this. Maybe not quite as easily as they did with the Gators, but they should control this game. They have the better quarterback. They have the better. They have the better quarterback. They have the better defense. They have the better specialists. They have the better team. They should win the game.
Speaking of the front defensive seven again, the defensive line, I think they roll in 8 people, and like you said, none of them are superstars.
Right. Right.
But the fact that they can roll in 8 people and keep them fresh, that is key. That is so big along that defensive line.
Is really important. I mean, I can't say how important that is because, I mean, when you're looking at, I mean, like to some degree, I thought last week with the stand on the goal line, they had J.R. Reed in the game. They were up 27. Were they up 27 at that point?
Yes, that was at the end of the game.
So I'm not so sure you needed J.R. Reed and company in there, but it mattered to them to make that stop. And if you're anybody else and it's another situation, I mean, Mizzou, if that's in the first quarter, they kick a field goal, there goes your shutout. But it's tough to score on these guys, man. I mean, they're allowing 10 points a game. Auburn is really good defensively. They're not allowing 10 points. I mean, it's not like that.
It's a different level.
It is. I mean, like you look at, no one scored 30 on Auburn this year. So 21, 6, 16, 20, 23, 13, 10, and 20 and 14. They held, 23 and 24 against the Gators and LSU. They held the most explosive offense outside this side of Ohio State to 23 points on the road. So Georgia's going to have to scratch and fight to get to 20. I mean, the line for this game has become anywhere from 2.5 to 3, basically 3 the whole week. But the over/under is dropped. It dropped 10%. Okay, it went from 45.5 to 40. That's a dramatic shift in. You're essentially saying that Georgia's going to win the game something like 22-18.
Well, that's about what LSU won it by, right?
Yeah, I mean
23-20.
It was 23-20. I mean, you're talking about 43 points, not a lot. Now here's the other, and we can talk about this a little bit more tomorrow. In fact, we will. Everybody make sure to stay tuned for our discussion tomorrow about this game. But Auburn's got to hold on to the ball. They start turning it over, you got some problems. All right, pay attention tomorrow. Riding home, another edition. This time on Thursday. Dean Legge and Dylan Webber. Go see what I've got here. Kirby's press conference from yesterday, right above you, and click to subscribe.